excuse me, I forgot to put my collar on.
Well, the reading from Emmett Fox is connected to Psalm 18. And so I will read specifically verses 8 to 16. And so I'll read part of the beginning of that to give us the context and just stop at 18, verse 18. I will love thee, O Lord, my strength and my trust. And if you can't hear me, just everybody hearing okay? All right. My refuge and my deliverer is the mighty God in whom I trust. He is my helper and the horn of my salvation and my glorious refuge. I will call upon the Lord, so shall I be saved from my enemies. For the pains of death surrounded me, and the rush of ungodly men have confused me. The travail of Sheol has taken hold of me, and the snares of death preceded me. In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried to my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. And then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also, the mountains, quaked and were shaken because he was angry. There went up a smoke out of his wrath, and fire flamed from his face, and coals were kindled by it. And that begins verse 8. He bowed the heavens and came down, and thick darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon cherubim and flew. Yea, he soared upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covert. His pavilion round about him was darkness of waters and thick clouds of the skies. Out of the brightness of his shadow, his clouds rained hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he multiplied his lightnings and confused them. And then the brooks appeared, and the foundations of the world were laid open at thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thine anger. He sent from on high and quieted me. He received me out of great waters. He delivered me from my strong enemies and from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my extremity, but the Lord was my deliverer. Thinking of one of his own experiences, the psalmist says that the sorrows of hell compassed him about, and the snares of death came upon him, and that he cried unto God. He went on praying, and that God came to his rescue. He says that the earth shook and trembled, and that the very hills moved because God was wrath. Of course, the earth means your environment and all the outer conditions that constitute your life experience at the present time. Thus, the shaking and moving of these things means that all your conditions are being changed naturally for the better. The wrath of God in the Bible always means the activity of God. It does not mean anger. And the highest gave his voice. So I'm going to repeat that. The title was The Activity of God. So the wrath of God in the Bible always means the activity of God. It does not mean anger. Interesting.
Okay, so today we're continuing on the conversation of 21 Ways to Build a Stronger Spiritual Life, based on a writing by Victor Parachin. We've gone through step 12, or way 12. 12 was turn your worries over to God. We're going to move now to 13, which is spread love wherever you go. Now, Parachin himself writes, this is the advice of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who said, spread love everywhere you go, first of all in your own house. Let no one ever come to you without leaving better and happier. Be the living expression of God's kindness. Kindness in your face, kindness in your eyes, kindness in your smile, kindness in your warm greeting. So that's what he's written. Now, to me, that concept that's presented here dovetails so well with the atheist maxim, which I refer to fairly often, that the goal in going through this world should be that you leave the world a better place for having passed through. And it also fits the Quaker concept that the divine resides, exists in all of us, and, if you will, by extension, the entire world. And it is our obligation as a part of God to respond to that of God in every man, woman, and child in the whole earth that we interact with. Now, it's important, I think, to understand that we should not equate this admonition to spread love wherever you go to a huge task, such as trying to move a mountain. We don't need to make it grandiose. We aren't the divine in its totality. All we are is our being and the God that is within us. And so, in terms of spreading love, sometimes all it needs is the touch of a feather. Sometimes just a brief recognition of someone or a brief response to someone will make a difference in their life, will be the spreading of love. Well, my mother and Phyllis are wonderful examples of this. After my mother had died in the small town of Denver where she lived her last years with my sister, it was about 3 months later that we were able to arrange a memorial service. And my sister and I were not expecting a big crowd, so we had it in her living room with half a dozen chairs. Well, we ended up taking every chair in the house and putting it in. The place was filled to capacity, and a large number of the people were not friends, but they were merchants, people in the community that she had interacted with. And I remember one in particular. It was a butcher who commented about how much it meant to him, because every time she was in purchasing something, she always had a compliment for him. How well he cut the meat, or how wonderful his meat was, or I don't remember exactly, but it was her recognition of his specialness, if you will, giving him credit for being, recognizing him for more than, here's your money. That was the common theme of those who were memorializing her. Now, Phyllis, when we walk in the neighborhood, she knows, I don't know if she knows everybody, but she knows so many people by name. And she stops, talks, how's your daughter, what's going on in school with her, and so forth. The same thing, recognizing neighbors, and I don't even know who they are. That's my shortcoming. But she has this wonderful capacity for responding to people. She'll even stop in a store just to say hi. That, frankly, flabbergasts me. It's a wonderful, I think of it as a pastoral spirit. I don't know how she thinks of it. But once again, spreading love, spreading caring, showing caring. Leah, who isn't here today for some reason, is a good example too. She never meets a stranger. When I was had a booth at Victory of Light, which, for those of you from out of town, that's the local psychic fair, holistic fair. Leah would be there working, and every so often she would show up leading someone that she had started talking to somewhere in the fair and heard that they needed something and realized that lift or our healing equipment was what they needed. The same showing caring to people whom she'd never met before. And as I was working on this talk, I found myself remembering an agony column like Ann Landers that I'd read some time ago. And it was a discussion of reaching out, of acknowledging people. And one of the commentators, after following the column, talked about a very simple phrase that he found seemed to work well in all circumstances. And it was simply, "Thank you for being here." And he spoke of one particular case. He was at a drive-through, was picking up his food order, and he said to the person handing it out the window, "Thank you for being here." And drove on, didn't think anything about it. Well, sometime later, he was back at the same drive-through, and the same person was there. And as she gave him the food, she remembered him and thanked him for what he had said. She told him, "That day I was feeling really low. I was thinking of not coming in and maybe just quitting. I didn't see any purpose to it. And what you said made my day. And I realized even if I'm doing this, it's important." We don't know how recognizing in a positive way someone else is going to affect their lives. But that is spreading love. And we can always work on the supposition that in showing caring, spreading love, we are doing the work of the divine. We're certainly not likely to be leaving harm in our wake by doing it, versus doing the transaction and leaving. For our Books for the Needy program, my bookkeeper and I end up taking the books to the post office every day. One of us does. And while I'm offloading into the bin the postal gal sets out for us, I witness people transacting with her in line. And they're not friendly. They don't say thank you. They transact, they leave. We're getting her a box of chocolate because she goes out of her way for us. And we let her know we appreciate it. But consider your transactions even at the checkout counter. Is there something you can say, some recognition, so that person who's been standing on his or her feet for who knows how many hours realizes that someone appreciates it, that they are appreciated, without lecturing to them, without being, giving them some sort of thing about God thinks you're special and so do I, or any of that junk. Just simple recognition and acceptance. So, as I was writing this, I was also remembering, Phyllis has told me, and I remember my mother telling me too, they're both teachers, both in lower grades. My mother taught first most of her career. And as time went by, some of the kids she had taught in first, and were now graduated, would come back to see her, to tell her what they were up to share their lives with her. All she did in teaching them was show them that they were special, that she cared for them. And for whatever reason, her caring was that special. Now, I say to you, it doesn't matter what stage in life you are, where you are, what you're doing. You have the opportunity to light little sparks of light in the lives of others. And you're not having to lift boulders, climb mountains to do it. Every so often, if I'm really on the ball, I'll ask, how many hours you got before you're off? 2 or 3. Well, may it be a wonderful 2 or 3 hours, or may it be wonderfully uneventful. They know we've recognized them as someone who exists as opposed to essentially an automaton or a robot just doing, give me the cash, okay, and on your way. Okay, so that's number 13 of 21 ways to build a stronger spiritual life. You're building a stronger spiritual life by allowing your peace of God in you to respond to the peace of God in everyone you meet. Number 14 is keep your priorities straight. And this is what Parachin says. Know what is ultimately important and what is not. Consider the words of former President George Bush, and I don't know which one. Quote, I am blessed with a close and wonderful family, and I want to spend the rest of my life letting them know how much I love them and appreciate them. He went on, one of my most important accomplishments, one I am still working on, is to be a huge success in the grandfather business. I would like to be remembered for integrity, service, and family. So I ask you, do you have a clear concept of your life priorities? Can you quickly and easily state your own set of priorities with clarity akin to what President Bush is quoted as saying? I realize I can't. I have this vague sense of what I want to accomplish, but I'm going to have to sit down and work on some words. And then the next step is get out your report card and evaluate how well you're keeping those priorities at the top of your life. You might also consider how well your current list of priorities aligns with your understanding of your divine connection and with your spiritual connection to this God-given earth. Now, bear in mind that the Peace Pilgrim said, this earth is God too. This tree is God. This rock is God. I'm God. This is time for introspection. And in terms of how well is your current list aligning with divine order, consider the contrast of two lawyers. One's a story I've heard, the other one is something I've read. My friend John Overbeck tells a story about his father, who was a small-town lawyer in Farm Belt, Illinois, during the Depression. And John told me how at his father's funeral, so many farmers showed up. And they came up to him after the funeral to tell him stories of how his dad had saved their farm from foreclosure. And you have to know that a farmer facing foreclosure was not going to be able to pay much of it all to the lawyer who saved his bacon. So compare that. In fact, I didn't write it down here, but I'm remembering John said that he had been told that roughly half the farmers in that county owed their farms to his father, and that the father had been very much disliked by the bankers in town because he saved so many farms from foreclosure. Now, consider a lawyer that I read about who makes money as a union buster. Think Amazon, Starbucks, where the lawyers are hiring out at $300 to $500 to $1,000 an hour to pull tricks, to pull legalities, to try to keep the workers from unionizing so they can be properly treated and properly paid. Which one represents the divine love? What might be the priority of the lawyer who believes in busting the small folks on behalf of the powerful? Now, I'm not suggesting any of you is in necessarily either camp, but you remember that sinning is missing the mark. And it's worth checking to see if you're missing the mark in terms of serving your priorities and how well your priorities align with divine love. So consider as an assignment for this week a sort of double-barreled consideration. One, make certain you have a clear, well-defined cat. Make sure you have a clear, well-defined definition of your priorities, something that you can say, as George Bush did. Now, he did it in 3 words. I don't know if I can get that close myself, but I'm going to try to get it down to 1 short sentence. And then once you have distilled what are your life priorities in your spiritual walk with regard to your spiritual walk, how well are your actions living up to your promises? And if you find questions that need exploration or some spiritual discernment, give me a call. That's part of why I'm here. If you'd rather talk with someone of the female persuasion, I suspect Phyllis would be more than happy to talk to you, though I haven't asked her. So if you call her, ask her first. So that's your assignment for the week. We're going to do one more way to build a stronger spiritual life, and that is number 15, strive for excellence. And Parachin writes, the Bible tells us from Ecclesiastes, whatever you do, do well. And then he says, be the best you can be at whatever station in life God has placed you. And I think of Brother Lawrence when I read this. He was, it seems, at his happiest based on his writings, and most at peace as he meditatively cooked for his spiritual community and as he cleaned the dishes thereafter. Now, let me be clear here. We're talking that the best of doing the best you can reasonably accomplish. We are not talking be perfect. The only person who can be perfect, if anyone, if anything, is the divine. Only the divine has any hope of perfection. And if you hold yourself up to that, I will say that you're actually committing sin because you're trying to be more than we as humans are capable of being. Rather, let the best you can do flow easily from your efforts. Intend that you will easily follow the Spirit and allow your connection with divine energy and divine love to help you easily do your best, accomplish the best that you can. Don't fret on it, don't stress on it, because then you're moving away from divine love. Just intend that you're going to do the best you can, and joyously, meditatively, do it. And rejoice while you do, and rejoice when you are finished. We thank you, God, for having given us this time together to share, to pray together, to care together, to learn together. We thank you for allowing each of us to draw closer to you during this time and draw closer to each other in our shared seeking. We thank you for watching over us, for protecting us, for guiding us, for opening new doors where we can move forward with our lives in you and be closer to you, in you, and of you. We thank you for allowing us to be in your service, to sometimes participate in the miracles you are working, and to sometimes experience a miracle you are working in us. For all the good and all the love you've shown us, for all the good and love you are preparing to drop into our lives, for all the guidance to help us move closer to you, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. And we all say, Amen.